Hello, everybody. Welcome to Girls Leadership IG Live. Hello, hello. We will get started in just a moment. Please enjoy the music. All right. I see that my coworker is joining. All right, let's see. Okay. Hello, everyone. Let me turn down a little music. Hello. All right, here we are. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited for the second iteration of our IG Live, coming to you from Oakland, occupied Lejeune Ohlone territories, and from
From New Jersey, New York, from occupied Lenape land.
all right, y'all. And today, we want to talk to you about an upcoming learning retreat that we're doing, Collective Belonging, that we've been doing together for the last few years. Before we do that, though, let us take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Henya Balalia. I am the National Training Director with Girls Leadership, and I am here with
Hi, I'm Catherine Castillo Cruz, and I am the Associate Director of Training and Engagement with Girls Leadership. And yeah, we've been doing this together for 4 years, right? Because we did one our first year. So that's awesome.
4 years to us and to all the people who've shown up and been
Yeah.
part of us. So thanks for tuning in, y'all. We appreciate you being here. All right, let's get into it.
All right, so we have some questions that we're gonna ask each other back and forth as a way of just like letting people know about collective belonging that's coming up. And there's two opportunities to do this learning retreat. One is in New York City at the beginning of February, and then one is in Oakland in April. But if as we're going through you have questions, drop them in the chat, in the comments, so that we can answer them, because we would really like to do that.
I love how,
All right.
you used to Zoom. Drop in the chat. You're like, wait, is
Are,
this the chat? Yes.
aren't we all just always on Zoom? Isn't life just Zoom now? Okay. Anywho, all right. So we've been doing a lot of listening to folks. So Girls Leadership, right? That's part of our philosophy, is that we're always trying to be in response to the needs of the folks that we're serving. And so in this case, it's teachers, it's educators, it's after school professionals, coaches, right? The folks that work with girls. And in our listening, some of the things that we're feeling, with some of the things we're hearing that teachers are feeling as they go into 2025, right, is that they're tired, and they're maybe a little scared, maybe feeling a little hopeless in reaction to whether that's, the changing political climate, just the constant bombardment of things and hurt in the world, and that they're seeking community, right? So we have tired, hopeless, scared, seeking community. And so, Henya, I'm wondering, what would you say to people who are feeling that way in terms of how collective belonging might support them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that even before this time, but especially during this time, we're very intentional about how we create space, right? And so we are intentional about what it feels like when you walk into a space, when you're in the space with us, and with a hope that by the time you walk away, you'll feel some transformation, you'll feel some nourishment, right? And so we create a container and we hold that container very intentionally. And I say this because teachers and folks who work with young people, folks who are caregivers, are often the people who are holding the container, and we're inviting you to come be held, right? We have space for sure, the reflections and the building our skill sets and the more practical, but we also have nourishing food. We also have ways to connect with people in ways that feel really meaningful. We have wellness stations as part of how we set up our space for these 3 day learning retreats. And we really build it in a way that is going to lead to more community and to deeper ties. Because I think it is, when we are feeling hopeless, when we are feeling tired, and we're feeling burnt out, and we're feeling scared of the world, it's really easy to feel isolated, especially in this
Yeah.
work. It's really easy to feel like you're alone, or you're alone in feeling this. And you're absolutely not alone in feeling this. And so much of what we do is to talk about feelings and processing feelings. And we may not talk about like your particular life in that moment and what you're particularly going through, but we are talking about things that maybe relate to other folks in the room, right? Something that connects us in our common humanity, and ways in which we have similar experiences and sometimes differing experiences. So we really are intentional about creating space for mindfulness too, right? We want it to be a place that recharges you. We know that we're inviting people to come into 2.5 days of training, 2.5 days of learning that can feel exhausting. But the idea is that we're going to play, right? We're going to have some moments of mindfulness. We're going to have some moments of, maybe trying out different kinds of expression, different ways of expressing ourselves. And the idea is that you are going to be able to get refueled and recharged. And also the idea that rest doesn't always look like we're stopping, right? And we're not doing anything. Sometimes rest really is like, let me go somewhere where I don't have to think about my meals for 3 days, or let me go somewhere where, again, a container is going to be held for me. And I think that's what we hear often, or that's what we hear, I want to say, time and time again from participants who come. We have this activity at the end, which we call our nourishment bowl activity. And we kind of ask people what has nourished you. And it's always so telling how much people say about all the ways that they felt nourished in our time together. And I also want to name that, I believe that the only way forward is through. And I think that we are in a difficult time. We also do understand that in a lot of ways, those of y'all working in schools, or those of y'all working in after school programs, you can really be the front line of difficult conversations or complexity, and holding that. And it is a time and an opportunity for us to sharpen our tools and sharpen kind of the ways that we're able to do things, and do it in community. Yeah, would you add anything to that about collective belonging?
No, I love the idea of recharging. Yeah, I think that there are certainly times where we just need to stop and do nothing to recharge. But I think there are also times where connection is refreshing, and a new solution, a new antidote for a problem is refreshing. And for me, it is like not having to make my meals for 3 days. So I like that. I love that you named all of that, and I hope that resonates with some folks. Sure.
Yes, agreed. And, speaking of reflections that we hear from folks in collective belonging, I think a reflection that I know you heard, and, I've heard in maybe some other words that I really love hearing is a participant who said, I came here thinking that it was a training for my girls, and it was, but it was also a training for me. What does that mean to you specifically, that statement?
Yeah, I think that is like we did our job, right? When someone says something like that, because um, being an educator is such a you're in such a place of like giving and giving and pouring out and pouring out and pouring out. And what this training is about is us pouring into them, and also having them recognize that their wellness and their sustainability is directly connected to the wellness and like longevity of their young people being able to learn. And I don't, quite frankly, feel like teachers are set up to believe that, right? Like, as somebody who went through teacher school, and I loved my teacher school, I was taught that I had to give and give and give and give. And to prove that I loved my kids, I had to keep giving past the point that I could give,
Mm.
right? And so that reframe is setting folks up to keep going. And the one thing I feel like when I work with teachers is that what's the one thing you want? Time. I want time. Duh, right? Like, teachers are so overtaxed. And so what collective belonging is it's time away to pause and really think through what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think that that is why people feel like, oh, this is for me. And then in addition to that, right, like the tools that we're giving to you, we always say, like, if you can't SEL for yourself, if you don't have social emotional learning skills for yourself, are you really going to be able to teach them to young people, right? So when we talk about building emotional capacity for young people, we're teaching these adults how to do it as well, right? If we're talking about how to help young people de-escalate from stress, we're helping the adults learn how to do it for themselves first, right? And so I think in that way, you really are leaving with a toolbox to keep sustaining yourself and keep sustaining your girls. And then finally, I just think you're going to walk into a room where you are deeply respected as an educator, right? Like, I don't even need to really know that much about you to know that, like, you're an educator who came here to grow. I already deeply respect you. And you're going to be treated like you're wise and like you're an expert in what you do. And that is morale boosting, right? Being in a space like that. And so, yeah, I think that it certainly is. That's the way we look at it. But to have participants say that is truly like joyful. That like makes me smile every time I reread that quote.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like we've heard, we've heard things like this is the best training I've been to in 40 years. I was actually in the first iteration of
Yeah.
2021, and this is someone who's been in the field for a long time, and I think it's, a combination of that, right? A combination of like you are going to be respected. Like we always talk about lifting up the wisdom in the room, and we always talk about what does it look like for us to create connections for people to get to speak their truth, hear other people's truth, and then from that be like, okay, well, what new thing comes out of that, right? And so we do promise for you to be challenged. We do promise for you to be nourished, and also in a lot of ways for you to be affirmed in the work that we do, in the work that you're already doing. I'm sorry, and yeah, hopefully bring a little playfulness in there too, in ways that feel accessible.
Yeah. So I think that's like a really good segue because we're talking about you're getting tools, you're getting tools, you're getting tools. So Hania, talk to us a little bit about the specific content and tools that participants are going to walk away with.
Absolutely. So we talk about building, we mentioned here, we build containers, and as a person who works with young people, you build a container every single day for your students, for your youth, right? And so we talk about building containers that feel brave. We're not saying that spaces shouldn't feel safe. They absolutely should. We also understand that a lot of spaces don't feel safe. And so what does it look like for us to create brave spaces? And we will walk you through some tools that we've used or tools that we've picked up from other educators along the way that support in making a brave space. We again also talk about what does it mean for us to reflect and have some time and some space to practice around our own social emotional skills. Because again, if we want to model and teach young people, a lot of us weren't taught how to manage, how to talk through, how to process kind of bigger feelings, harder feelings when we were younger. And now we're trying to show it to young people. So what does it mean for us to have that kind of space to deconstruct for ourselves? We also share some strategies about how to actually foster belonging in some ways that will be meaningful for your young people. We also talk about how to incorporate play and mindfulness in ways that feel really intentional, that feel really meaningful, and also that feel productive, right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness is a way to just be able to be present amongst many other things, and we believe that play is a vessel into a lot of things, and specifically vulnerability and maybe deeper and harder conversations. We'll have some space for some mirror work, so some self-reflection, specifically around our identities, our biases, kind of like how we get to move through the world. And from that, also some role plays and some practice around what does it look like to intervene when we see bias rather than being bystanders. We'll also talk about the kind of values that we have in our classroom and how those support or don't support the kind of culture that we want to create. So a lot of what we do is rooted in culture, it's grounded in culture, and in order to be able to have the kind of culture that feels inclusive, inviting, and welcoming to all identities, we have to be able to name and recognize and push back against the dominant culture traits that are not healthy, or that are not that are not healthy to the well-being of our space. And then we also, important, especially at this time of year, from now until the end of the year, we talk about what is compassion fatigue, how do we recognize compassion fatigue in ourselves, and how do we address it. So again, the well-being of educators is really important. We can't just talk about the well-being of our young people. So this is a moment where we get to really go inward and support you. And in that, we explore some tangible ways in which to build spaces that feel healing and that feel liberating and liberated for our young people, especially young people who've been systematically marginalized. Anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's like a lot in that, like, you're going to get your time's worth, your money's worth, right? However you want to say it. And I want to just like, I want to like pull back the curtain a little bit on like the thing that we do, right? Which is like, we make sure that it is digestible. We make sure that it is, you know, well thought out, and that there are breaks, right? Like I'm just thinking as a audience member, hearing all of that and just like wanting to reiterate that we are going to take care of you. We are going to take care of the group as we move through that. And we've done this for so many years, and we're getting really good at it. You know, and I'm excited about that. So like, oh yeah, we do all these things in that training.
And
yeah.
you know, like as Catherine is saying, we scaffold things and we make it bite-sized, or like, well, we're going to move to the next thing once we got this thing. And we see this as a journey, right? And the way in which we walk in and we hope that you'll be transformed by the time you walk out. And everything we do is holding how to be culturally responsive with you in the room, and also how to create a space that feels healing. And so if we want to do people, we want to do that for you. So speaking of feeling overwhelmed and, you know, tons of things to do and tons of things to think about, often social emotional learning and the skills around our social and emotional skills can feel like one more thing that teachers have to add on top of all their other responsibilities in the classroom or in the school and the after school program. How do you think that collective belonging addresses that particular issue?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's something that I come up against a lot when I'm working with teachers. Not in a like combative way, but in a like a tired way of like, here's one more thing this lady's gonna come in and tell me I have to do, you know, and so I thought a lot about this question, and I want to start my answer off by saying that the reality that schools are a catch-all is real, right? Like, and it needs to be named, right? Because it's a problem at a systemic level, right? When resources are lacking, when there are gaps that need to be filled, society dumps a lot of that onto schools, and without giving the schools more, giving them more people, more resources, more money, right? And so I do know that that is a real thing, and I know that it's a real feeling for teachers. And it actually, you know, I'm always telling you, I was like, I read this article in Edutopia. It made the like Edutopia like 10 trends from last year of like teachers just being asked to do more and do more and do more. And so I think what I'll say about social emotional learning is that it is foundational, right? So which means we aren't actually asking or we aren't really telling teachers that they need to do more. We're really inviting them to consider how they do what they already do, right? And again, that's where the taking the time, the taking the pause really comes into play. We're inviting them to think about how they do what they already do. And also, I think perhaps to think more deeply about the who that they do it in service of, right? Because what we know by doing this work is that when we think about the how, when we think about the who, and we make adjustments that center the whole student, that center the cultural norms of the student, that tend to their emotions, when we invest in relationship building, when we teach communication, all the other stuff gets easier, right? The teaching of the math becomes easier. The getting kids not to cut class becomes easier because their investment has changed. And so I think a way to really think about it, right, is like, what are the challenges that you're having in your classroom, and how can SEL help you solve them? Rather than like, you have to cut your math class in half because you have to spend 30 minutes every day teaching people how to name their feelings, right? Like, sure, that's one way, but that's not the most it's not the most effective way, because every single thing we do is social and emotional, right? It's all there. And so I think, yeah, just to reiterate, like, it's really about taking a step back to look at the how, to look at the who they are, who we are, and threading it. I don't know, there's probably a good food metaphor that I could have come up with or something. I'm always, but really making it the foundation of what you do, and integrating it into your philosophy, and not adding more work. Different, just it's not more. But I don't know. What do you have any thoughts that you would add to that? Because I think it's an it's an interesting nuanced kind of problem.
I really appreciate, yeah, I really appreciate the way you're framing it, because I think that everything we do is social emotional. We are social emotional beings. That is our essence. We move through the world, and I think that so much of our focus in our spaces and how we create it, and how we always, one of our philosophies is we are going to model something if we then expect you to do it. We're going to, lift the veil sometimes and share with you, we are doing this in order to, so that you can then take it and use it right away, right? Because I think it's amazing to come to trainings. I think it's amazing to get skill set. And sometimes the question is, well, what do I do now? Or how do I take this? Or how do I do what you're doing? And one of the things I think our team is really strong at, and we're strong at it because we're intentional about it, is we model how to build trust in a deep, meaningful way, and often quickly, right? And trust is not an easy thing to build, and trust is not an easy thing to build with young people at times. Sometimes it is, at times it's not, right? We've all been there. And so I think it's like, what is the foundation for having healthy relationships with young people, relationships that feel deeper and more transformative? And what is the foundation of being able to have conversations around, what can be really vulnerable topics like identity and culture, and what's happening in the world, which is all part of the conversations that happen in schools or have to happen in schools, right? And so how do we create, again, a foundation where we can have trust, we can be brave, we can model being brave, so that our young people can feel comfortable being brave with us. And so, yeah, I think we will show and we will share as much as we can the strategies that we use to build a container that allows for all of that to happen, hoping that you can just walk away and take what you need to, the very next day. All right. Well, thank you so much, y'all. Like we said at the beginning, if there's any questions, please drop them in the little comment box. And our upcoming Collect the Belongings are in New York on February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and in Oakland on April 14th, 15th, and 16th, downtown Oakland. And yeah, anything else we want to share for folks?
I would uplift that we offer sliding scale pricing. That's something that's unique about us, which means that to a certain, right, we recognize that people have different resources and they come from orgs that have different levels of resources, and we don't want that to be a barrier. So to some extent, it's like we offer 4 different price points, I believe, and you can choose which one will work for you. So if that is something that maybe you were wondering about, check out the website, because we tried our best to make it accessible. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you, Catherine, and to talk about all the things. Thanks for being here.
Back at you. I hope you have a really good rest of your. I know you have a little bit more of your day, but I'm about to go eat dinner.
A little bit more of our day on this coast. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy start Gregorian year, and hopefully we'll see you at Collective Belonging. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.